What's going on, guys? I'm Tyler, and continuing my series of Disney movie reviews, I'm here to let you know that Lilo and Stitch is no perfect movie. And it centers on extraterrestrial creation 626, voiced by Chris Sanders, who's an extraterrestrial designed to cause destruction upon anything that comes in its sight. And it escapes from intergalactic police and lands on Hawaii, of all places, where he meets a young girl named Lilo who's dealing with the fact that her parents died in a car crash and she's living with her older sister. And Stitch decides to pretend to be a pet dog for her, which in a weird way helps Lilo come to terms with the tragedy and also help Stitch understand what it means to have a family. And I gotta be honest, I was a little afraid of rewatching this movie because I remember seeing it in theaters when it first came out, but really feeling sad about it because I thought that Lilo's life was completely miserable and that was what made the movie so depressing. But I gotta say, upon rewatching this movie, the best thing that it has going for it is the family dynamic between Lilo, Stitch, and the older sister Nani, because it makes the wise choice of focusing on the aftermath of a family tragedy as opposed to the before and during to really focus on the healing process, how it takes a really long time, how it comes with having just so many bad days over and over again, but how you can come to terms with that tragedy by focusing on building positive relationships with the people in your life who love you and you love back. And that is what makes this movie so uplifting, sweet, and cheerful. Now, I gotta be honest, I don't know how to say this girl's name. Daveigh Chase. I'm not entirely sure. What I know most about her is that she also played Chihiro in Spirited Away and Samara in The Ring. Yeah, that's right, the exact same girl. And as Lilo, she gave such a genuine performance that is one of two things that make Lilo one of, if not the most realistic kids in a Disney movie. And the other is the writing that doesn't really shy away from the fact that kids in real life aren't always cutesy. In fact, sometimes they are rarely cutesy. Sometimes they can have emotional outbursts within a split second and change their mind just as quickly. Sometimes they act out. Sometimes they believe in imaginary things to the point where it just makes them seem strange and stubborn. And it really adds to the conflict, but also the understanding between her sister, Nani, who's played really well by Tia Carrere. You feel really bad about the fact that she is struggling to do everything that she can in order to take care of Lilo. And you really believe that that's the thing that matters the most to her in life, but you can't really escape the fact that the two of them, at the end of the day, are still sisters. And naturally, they argue with each other a lot, and in a really juvenile way. But one of the sweetest and most tender moments are when they accidentally reenact each other's movements, and that establishes a lot of unspoken connection between the two. And it really makes you wonder how strong of a relationship they had before this tragedy. Was it just as antagonistic as a sibling relationship in general, or was Nani a lot more of a stronger mother figure before all this terrible stuff happened? Jason Scott Lee as her boyfriend was surprisingly pretty endearing. Most boyfriends, even in Disney movies, care more about scoring with the girl, but there are quite a few scenes where his main focus is just trying to make them feel more uplifted to come to terms with the terrible stuff that happened, and it leads to some of the more sweeter moments in the movie. And it makes you forget about the fact that, regardless, he also really does want to score with this girl. And of course, Chris Sanders, who not only came up with the story and the character since '85, not only did he co direct the movie, but he's also really good as Stitch. And, you know, like a lot of people say, he does cause more harm than good. And for the first half hour or so, I was kind of not sure how I was supposed to feel about him, which, based on what I said about Lilo, Nani, and even the boyfriend David, that's clear as day the point. The movie doesn't defend any of these characters' terrible actions. It just gives us reasons that you don't condone, but you understand why they act out, and you really want them to learn their lessons and improve as characters. And when it's discovered that Stitch wasn't really created with any real purpose other than causing destruction, and when it comes to a point where he has nothing left to destroy, he finds himself very uncomfortable and lonely, and he realizes that Lilo is the most compassionate person that he's ever met in his incredibly short lifetime. And he feels really touched by that. He wants to give that compassion back to her by being not really a pet, obviously, but a friend, a family member. And that was what made the bond between the two of them genuine and believable. And you know what? I love the way they portray Hawaii in this movie. The animation is obviously going to look bright, beautiful, colorful, and as cheerful as you would expect Hawaii to look. And Alan Silvestri's score has a lot of the major components of what makes Hawaiian music sound really catchy. This nice blend of country and rock that has such a catchy rhythm to it, especially the original songs with Hawaiian Roller Coaster Ride. That was part of what was maybe my favorite scene in the entire movie. And as surreal as it is, I can't believe I got to hear Elvis songs in a Disney movie. It just seems so strange, but hey, I love me some Elvis music, so I can't complain. But one thing that I also noticed about the portrayal of Hawaii is that despite how beautiful everything looks and despite how cheerful it seems, it doesn't really shy away from the fact that the people who live there experience the exact same good things and bad things in life that anyone would expect in any other state. And it actually kind of humanized Hawaii as opposed to just making it another vacation spot. The subplots where the aliens are trying to catch Stitch and bring him back was a fine on its own, but it was nowhere near on the same level as the family dynamic, which, you know, in its defense, Ogden Stiers did a really good job as Stitch's creator who's trying to recapture him, and he has a couple good lines when he's bouncing back and forth with Kevin McDonald as this handler for him, but McDonald himself got really annoying with his high pitch after a while, and his jokes were repetitive right from the start. There's a side villain who shows up at the beginning but doesn't really do anything until the last 20 minutes. It does lead to a really fun climax involving a chase with a gasoline truck. That went in a way that I wasn't entirely expecting, but his character, his physicality, his design had a lot of really good potential, but it just led to nowhere. As did Ving Rhames as this kind of badass social worker who doesn't take that much joy in the fact that he has to separate kids from families, but he acknowledges it's part of his job and sometimes it's for the best. Something happens towards the end of the movie that makes you rethink almost everything about him as a character, and it was a lot to digest in a split second, but those were really the only problems that I had. Lilo and Stitch was such a genuine surprise. Outside of the beautiful animation and music that you would expect from a Disney movie, it also has the exact things we want from Disney characters and a story. It has characters we can understand, characters who are flawed, but for reasons that you can identify with. And with the way it captures family tragedy in a way that other Disney movies involving orphans or dead parents haven't before and maybe still haven't, was really impressive. And for all those reasons, I'm going to give Lilo and Stitch a 4 out of 5. Guys, thanks as always for watching. If you have seen Lilo and Stitch, do let me know in the comments below what you thought of it. Be sure to stay tuned for more Disney reviews, and be sure to like and subscribe. Take care.